The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to today's coaching session with your host, James McDonald and Craig Proctor.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. And I'd like to start by welcoming our participants to our coaching session here today. And yes, Craig is going to be talking about getting the right price. And, really, this is a very specific part of the listing presentation. And what's so vital about it is that regardless of the market conditions, and, we have coaching members from all over the country, all over the continent for that matter, and the market is always changing, and you could be in a buyer's market or a seller's market. But this is something that we were discussing yesterday. Regardless, it's always important that you're able to articulate the benefits of listing the home at the right price. And so what Craig is going to explore on this webinar are all of the things that you need to do and say and demonstrate and show that will help you get the right price in the first place, as well as get price reductions as need be or if need be. So this is a really good webinar that you've come on here today. So having said that, Craig, I know you're eager to get going and share all of your tricks and tips. So having said that, welcome to our call and take it away.
Tricks and tips. Well, there's not anything too tricky about this. It's pretty logical. Of course, I did over 8,000 listing presentations, so the listing presentation was well practiced. And of course, I had my share of, especially early in my career, my share of overpriced listings. And I think we'd all agree that getting the price right from the get-go makes our life a lot easier. So we're going to talk about how to do that. We're going to talk about why we overprice properties, because that does happen, right? We price homes higher than we know they should be priced at. And, we kind of blame the seller and we say, well, that's what they wanted. That would be like us saying, James, that would be like you going to the doctor and, the doctor says, well, James wanted that prescription, so, I kind of had to give it to him.
Right.
And we're going to talk about all of this. We're going to talk about operating from a position of strength versus operating from a position of weakness, because when you don't have much business, when you're operating from desperation, you do things that normally you wouldn't do. So we're going to talk about how the whole system really fits into what we're talking about here today. But let's start with the first slide here. This is an important point. Nobody can create motivation where motivation doesn't exist. Okay, so the seller's either motivated to price their home properly or they're not. So there's only so much we can do with somebody that's not motivated. And of course, the answer is to have enough business coming in that you don't have to work with people that are unmotivated. If you work with someone that's not going to listen to you, okay, or they're not that motivated, the house is not going to sell. Or if it does, it's going to take a long, long time, and this seller's probably not going to be happy with you, and they're probably going to run around town saying negative things about you. So the starting point is really having an effective lead generation system. If you've got a ton of sellers to pick from, you're not going to worry about the seller that wouldn't list their home properly. The seller that lacks motivation. Okay, now, if you don't have enough listings, you're going to take on anybody. Okay, so it all starts, the starting point is really having an effective lead generation system. And the next question is, what should we be presenting to sellers who are motivated? Okay, have you ever found, you ever feel sometimes like you're more motivated to get their home sold than they are? Well, that's the time to bail. If they lack motivation, if they're not going to price their home properly, then having an overpriced listing is a crushing expense. It's not a profit center. Okay, so what should you be presenting to sellers that are motivated? We're going to talk about that here today. Okay, so listing homes that don't sell are not a profit center. Now, in a market that's falling, you've got to be really particularly careful here, because the market could be falling faster than your ability to reduce the price. So if you happen to be in a marketplace where prices are falling, which is kind of rare all over North America, it pretty much is in a stable market or in an uptrend. But if you're in a falling market, pricing the property right from the get-go is even more important. Okay, in a falling market, you have to lead the market down. You can't be following the market down. And I really made my mark in this business in 1991. That was my third year in the business, and there was a big recession here in Toronto in 1991, for those of you that remember. And I made my mark by being really, really strong on pricing. My listings were selling when a lot of other listings were expiring. And people that were listed with other agents were starting to notice that, and they were calling me. Okay, so to survive in a recession, I learned to become very, very strong on pricing. Okay, so again, the only reason that we would take on an overpriced, unmotivated seller is because we've got nobody better. We lack the power of choice. Okay, and I've been there before. I've been nervous to be truthful with sellers who are overpriced because it was my only listing. I really didn't even want to know how motivated they were because I was afraid that the answer might be that they weren't motivated at all. Okay, so you must have the luxury of choice. Okay, so you can say no to illogical sellers. Because all the information that I'm going to share with you here today, it only works if the seller is logical. You can show them all the graphs. You can go through this entire system I'm going to share with you here today, but it's going to fall on deaf ears if the seller lacks motivation or if they're just illogical. I remember one time, James, I had a house that was overpriced. Not for the house, actually. It was overpriced for the condition of the home. And that's always a difficult situation because it was in a subdivision where that particular model was selling in a very, defined price range. The problem is the house was a disaster inside. I mean, it really showed poorly. But when I looked at the comparables with the seller, all the other homes that were in that neighborhood or on that street were all selling within $5,000 in a certain price range. And that's what we listed this home at. It wasn't selling, of course. The feedback was horrible when realtors showed their buyers. The buyers and the agents were quite taken back by the lack of showability of this property. So, of course, after a month or so, the property's not selling, and I have to be delicate here because, yes, that particular model should sell in that range. They all are selling in that development in that range. But how do you say to the seller, hey, your house is a bit of a disaster inside, which it was. So I get this bright idea that what I'll do is I'll take the seller out on the weekend and I'll show them the other 3 or 4 models that are for sale right now that are the exact same model. And surely that, they'll look at these other homes that are the same model that are beautiful inside with new flooring and new carpets and freshly decorated and new windows. They're going to look at these other homes, and then we're going to come back to their house, and they're going to get it, right? They're going to think, well, there's no way we can compete with these other 4 homes that are beautiful and the exact same model as ours at the same price. So we get back home, and you want to know what they say to me? They said, I think we should raise the price. I kid you not. So that's an example of having an illogical seller. Okay, another quick story, which is equally as, maybe not as funny, but James, there was one time I took these buyers out and I'm showing them homes, and you really never know, what the buyer likes, what they don't like, and I bring them into this house that's a total disaster. I mean, I walk in and, there's clothes all over the place. There's dog doo-doo on the carpet. This place is a train wreck. Now, okay, so James, I'm just about to apologize to my buyer for bringing them through this horrible home because I didn't preview the house, and I should have, but anyway, I'm about to apologize for this, and they say, we really like this. Okay, so you never really know. But anyway, that backfired. So the point I want to make here is the sellers sometimes are illogical. If they're not motivated and they're illogical, none of what I show you here is going to work. Nothing's going to work.
And Craig, talk about the seller that says, when talking about pricing, they start the conversation by telling you what they need for their home, what they need to get for their home.
Well, that's very common.
Right.
I remember many times laying down the comparables and going through this process I'm going to reveal today. And the seller would say to me, well, I'm not interested in what other homes are selling for. This is what I need for my home. They're not interested in what's happening with the rest of the world. I need to only be interested in what's going on in their world. And they need a certain amount. And there's no basis for it, of course. Anyway, I think we've hammered that point home, that working with an illogical, unmotivated seller, nothing's going to work. So, don't worry about it because nothing's going to work. All you're going to do is spin your wheels and blow a whole bunch of money and sit in their house on weekends. And ironically, the illogical, unmotivated seller, they're the ones that demand the most. You can never do enough for them. So what was happening earlier in my career is these are the listings I'm getting, and I'm blowing money I don't have, and I'm wasting all this time with them. And every once in a while, maybe I get one sold, but they're not happy with me because the process took months and months and months and months, and they end up selling the home for way less than what they think they should have got for the home. So mastering lead generation in the universal callback script is where it's at. It's going to solve a lot of your problems. Okay, so I guess what I'm saying to you here today is a big part of solving your pricing problems would be getting your marketing and conversion system up and going. Okay, good marketing solves 90% of your problems. It just does, because then you have lots of sellers and you're going to pick and choose who you're going to work with. Who are you going to decide to work with? The most motivated, the most sincere, the most ready to act sellers out there, sellers that are going to do things your way and not fight you. And James, you do a good job every Thursday helping our members become experts at the universal callback script.
Yeah, you're not begging for business. It's not tricking somebody who isn't motivated into being motivated.
There is no tricking them. There's no motivating somebody that's not motivated. Right, and that goes for a lot of things in life. Right, I just came back from the gym this morning. Okay, I should go more often. I should do more when I'm at the gym, but only I can do that. Nobody's going to make me more motivated than I am. Right, I either am or I'm not. Okay, now we looked at the universal callback script right here. Now that's the script that you're going to use to make outbound calls. But I also would get calls into the office. And my call coordinator, her name was Cindy, she would qualify the sellers that were calling into the office. You know, we used to call these come list me's, but today we don't get as many come list me's. We might get this, come in for an interview. Okay, that's more common today. But there was a time there for many, many years where I would get come list me's. I would say probably a good 10 or 12 years. I had a period of market domination. It was really easy because sellers would just call the office and say, come and get me. I want Craig to list my home would be the message. Okay, now as things became more competitive, that turned into, we would like to interview Craig. We're meeting with a bunch of agents, and we'd like Craig to be one of them. So there's some important qualifying questions, and you're going to find these, again, on the coaching site. Okay, you're going to find the qualifying questions right here. So let's have a look at these qualifying questions. Obviously, Cindy's going to take down their name, their address. Where did you hear about us? That's important. Are you planning on listing your home when Craig comes out? I mean, if they check off yes, and I'm cool with that. That means I probably don't have to do a full-blown listing presentation. So that's important to know. If so, sometimes they'll ask, well, why do you need to know that? So Cindy will say, are you planning on listing your home when Craig comes out? Sometimes the seller says, well, why would you need to know that? So Cindy will say, well, because when Craig gets there, if you're planning on listing with him, could you please have available your current tax bill, the survey of your property and legal description, and any mortgage documents. Now, when I get to their home and this information's out on the kitchen table, I pretty much know they're ready to list their home. Are you guys able to hear me okay, by the way, James?
Yep, you sound crystal clear.
Okay, good. Just checking. So, if I get to their home, James, I get into the kitchen, and on the table, I see their tax bill and a copy of their survey sitting on the kitchen table. What does that tell my brain? These people are ready to list their home with me.
Yep.
Okay, and then Cindy asked some qualifying questions. Do these look familiar? Where and why are you moving? How soon do you need to be there? And then she asked some information about the home so we can create the market analysis, square footage, bedrooms, style of home, etc. Is your basement finished, yes or no? What do you feel the property value is? It's amazing how many sellers will actually tell Cindy what they think their home is worth. Well, that's not going to entirely dictate what we're going to list the home for, but it's a clue as to what the seller's expectations are. Now, sometimes they want less than what the house is worth. Well, it's good to know that as well. Quite often, of course, we're dealing with the opposite problem. They may say to Cindy as well, we'll let Craig tell us that. That's why we want Craig to come over, because we want his opinion on what the property's worth. Okay, are you looking for a market evaluation with other real estate agents as well? Yes or no? How many, when, and who? Now, sometimes they would say none of your business, but often we would know how many, when they're interviewing the other agents, and then Cindy's going to try to set the appointment in so I'm in last. Okay, so when would a convenient time for Craig to come over after you've interviewed the other agents? Why? Because Craig wants to show you how much extra he does to get your home sold. And once she has that appointment secured, she's then going to say, and you've heard me say this before, that Craig's going to do a fair amount of work in preparation for the appointment with you on Friday. And all he asks in return is your commitment that you won't list with one of the other agents before you have a chance to meet with him. Does that sound fair? Okay, so this is a very important question. You should be asking this when you're making outbound calls. And if there's inbound calls coming to you or your assistant, don't be afraid to ask, are you speaking with other agents? Again, earlier in my career, I get this. I was afraid to ask that question because I didn't want to hear the answer. Okay, so I would like to be the last agent you meet with so I can show you how much extra I can sell your home for. Now, remember, all these PowerPoints you're going to have access to. Okay, let me show you again for those of you that came on a little bit late. The pricing presentation, the entire presentation, you can download it here. Okay, so everything I'm showing you here on PowerPoint, you can download. Okay, the qualifying questions that Cindy would ask, they're right here. Okay, then lock in their commitment. Okay, let the seller know you're going to do a fair amount of work in preparation for the appointment, and all you ask in return is for their commitment not to list with one of the other agents before they have a chance to meet with you. Then you simply ask them, does that sound fair? Now, when you get to their home, make sure you always present your benefits before you go into pricing or your fee. Okay, you don't start the presentation off talking about price. Why? Because you haven't built up expert-like status yet. Okay, that's the job of the presentation. The job of the presentation is to position you as the expert, because the seller is going to listen to an expert. If the seller sees you as just a salesperson, they perhaps will fight you on price. Okay, so we can't do this backwards. Present all the benefits first, and I'm going to share with you some things that you can show the seller to position you as the expert, somebody who's really got their finger on the pulse of the market. You do that first. So benefit, 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 benefit. At the end of your listing presentation, that's when you go into pricing.
What you're really determining, Craig, is are they choosing you because of the benefits that you're offering them, or are they choosing you because of the price you give them?
Well, I'm going to say it this way. The message that we want to communicate is they should be listing their home with the realtor they believe will get them the highest price, not the realtor that's telling them the highest price.
Yes.
Okay, not necessarily the realtor that's telling them the highest price. Okay, now after I'm done the benefit portion, and before I discuss pricing, I ask for the order. Now, this is going to be a foreign thought to many of you, but James, if you were the seller, I go through the entire listing presentation. Before I even talk about pricing and before I discuss my commission rate, I would say, well, look, James, based on what we've discussed so far, do you think you'd like me to handle the sale for you? Would you like me to handle this for you? Now, sometimes the seller will say, well, gee, Craig, you haven't even talked about price. Like, what's your commission? What would you list my home at? To which I say, well, based on what we've discussed so far, and assuming we can come to an agreement on price and my fee, would you like me to handle this? Why is this important? Why do I do it that way? It's not the way I used to do it. Here's the way I used to do it. I would do my presentation, not ask for the order, go straight into price, and then I would talk about my commission rate. And at the end, they would say no. Well, here's the problem. I did not understand what they were saying no to. Were they saying no to the benefits? Were they saying no to my suggested list price? Were they saying no to my fee? They weren't willing to sign. Would you agree that you can't handle an objection until you know what the objection is? Okay, you can't handle an objection unless you identify what the objection is. So I like to do it this way. Go through all the benefits and then ask for the order. So James, based on what we've discussed so far, would you like me to handle this for you? And James says, well, gee, I don't know what, we haven't even talked about your list price.
It depends on, depends on your commission.
Okay, now
list price.
Let's stop right there. Should the seller's decision on who they're going to list with come down to who tells them the highest price? Because that's really what the seller, if you say that to me now, James, that's a discussion we're going to have. Because what you're saying is, yeah, all that stuff, Craig, you talked about is great, but what's your price? Because that's how I'm deciding. What's your commission? If your price is higher than the other guys, if your fee is lower, then yeah, that's how I'm doing it. And I'm trying to isolate this. I'm trying to get the seller to understand that they should be basing their decision on who they believe can get them the highest price, who has the best marketing plan, who has the best track record, who's demonstrated expert status here, who do they really think is going to help them achieve the highest price, not simply which realtors, telling them the highest price or the lowest commission. This is kind of funny, but it's pretty much the truth. I used to bring a smile and the same MLS printouts as all the other agents. That was my listing presentation. You see, there were no benefits to talk about. So what I would do is I would have a bunch of printouts. Well, way back then it was the MLS book. Here's your current listings. And then written on the current listings, some of them had been sold. I think the MLS book came out like every 2 weeks. So, James, I get to your house with the MLS book, and I would some of them would be sold, and I'd write in a red pen, sold, and this is what it sold for. Okay, and then, of course, in the 1990s, we brought a bunch of printouts. So my idea was I'm going to bring as many printouts as possible because that should help, right? So I'd bring 25 comparable sales. Hey, if there were 30, I might bring 30. So, James, imagine I get to your kitchen table, and I've got 30 printouts, and I think I'm impressing you, but guess what? The opposite happens. You've often said this, James, the confused mind does nothing.
That's right.
right? So what happens is the seller doesn't know what to make of this now. And I would hear this many times. Well, gee, Craig, we're not going to list with you tonight. We need to think about this. You've brought us so much information that now you've really given us a reason not to list tonight because we have to decipher all this information. Now, the sellers really don't want to decipher information. What the seller really wants is they want you, the realtor, to decipher the information. They don't want the process to be confusing. They want it to be easy. They're looking for you, the realtor, to take them by the little hand and lead them to the promised land. That's what they want. I mean, think of yourself. If you were going to invest your money, James, do you want someone that's going to come over to your house and confuse you and your wife, or someone that's going to make it all simple and say, look, this is what we're going to do. Here's why we're going to do it. They've created expert-like status in your mind, like they're the expert, and they've gained your trust, and they're just going to take care of it all. That's what we want, right? So that's a common mistake. Many of you bring way, way too many MLS comparables, and you confuse the seller. And the confused mind does nothing. Don't give the seller a reason not to list with you. Okay, you got to take charge. Sellers want an agent who will take them by the hand and simplify the process. So here's my formula, real simple, and many of our previous members would say, Craig, really? This is all you did? Yup. And let me explain why I did it this way. I would bring 5 inferior sales, 5 inferior comparables. I would bring 5 superior sales and 5 comparable sales. And here's what I would do. James, first of all, I would show you the 5 homes that were obviously inferior to your house. The homes were in the same area, same street maybe, but they were smaller. The homes were not as big. The lots perhaps were not as big. They didn't have as many upgrades. And I always start with the homes that are inferior, not as good as yours. Because it's easy, James, to get you to say, yeah, my house is better than those. So I'm going to agree with James. I'm going to say, yep, your home is better than these. And these homes, they all sold in the $450,000 to $475,000 range. That's what they sold for. And there's 5 of them here, James. And I agree with you that your home is better than those. Now I lay out the 5 superior sales. Now these houses are obviously superior. They're bigger, they're newer, they're better, the lots are bigger, whatever. And I lay those out. Okay, and what I'm hoping, if I've got a logical seller, now remember, this doesn't work. If James is illogical, James doesn't get it, right? If he's illogical, he doesn't agree that these 5 obviously superior sales in the neighborhood are superior. And again, there's nothing we can do about a logical seller. But let's say for an example here today, James, you look at the 5 superior sales, and what do you say to me?
Yeah, wow, those are impressive.
Right. Okay, now those homes all sold over $500,000. So now I've boxed James in. I've boxed the seller in. Okay, the 5 homes that are inferior sold in the $450,000 to $475,000 range. The 5 homes that James and his wife agree are superior all sold over $500,000. Now I lay down. See, I'm positioning you now, right? I've got you boxed in to a price range. I lay down the 5 comparable sales. And guess what? They all sold between $475,000 and $500,000. So I'm leading James, I'm leading the seller to where I want James, the seller, to come to the conclusion. It's way more powerful if we can get the seller to come to that conclusion rather than us telling them the price. Can everybody see that? This is the mistake I made earlier. I'd say, James, your house is worth between $475,000 and $500,000. I'm telling him the conclusion. Okay, not as effective. Way more effective if I can help James come to his own conclusion. I want to lead the seller to his own conclusion. Okay, so that was very successful, that technique. And it didn't overwhelm the seller. You see, James, I'm not presenting you so much information that you're blown away. I've really dumbed it down. Right? In your neighborhood, I've picked the 5 that were inferior, the 5 that you yourself agree are superior, and guess what? Now there's 5 that are just like yours. Would you agree, James, of all the comparables we looked at today, that these 5 are the most like yours?
Absolutely.
You got nowhere else to go, right?
Right.
So what do you think we should price your home at, James?
Yeah, probably something comparable to these.
You got it. Now, I also want to show the seller statistics that the other agents won't. Okay, now I've explained how all of you can become involved with the program at realtystatistics.com, and you can now demonstrate trending to the seller. Okay, not just static information. See, even the little system that I just described to you is not perfect in the fact that we are looking at the rearview mirror. Right? All of the comparables, James, I was showing you, that's what happened. Right? That's what happened. That's what happened in the past. If you really want to become the expert, you're going to show trending. You're going to demonstrate to the seller that, hey, I have information that no other realtor's going to show you, and I not only know where the market's been, this is going to help us identify where the market's going. So the first graph I would share with you here, James, is look at in your neighborhood, here's all the homes that are sold for 100% of the asking price or more. Okay, now look at, it's not as good as it was earlier in the year. Okay, this was the summer. Okay, this is January here. So February, March, April, May. Look at May. 17% of the homes that sold for 100% or more. And now in the fall, things have dropped off a bit. So what does that tell us? Sellers aren't as confident. They're not getting as close to the asking price. Let's look in at the same time period. Let's look at the number of homes that have sold, James, in your neighborhood. So January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, it peaked out at 163. September, 147. And here we are. And look what's happening. What does that tell us if there's less homes selling? The trend is down. Okay, average price. Well, that's kind of all over the place. That doesn't tell us much. But look at this. List to sales ratio. The percentage of the asking price that sellers are getting has dropped dramatically over the last couple months.
This is probably the most important one you could show them.
Right. So what does that tell you as a seller, James?
What you're getting, what prices are dropping, what you're netting for your home is declining.
What I love about these, what I love about this information is, yeah, number one, your competitors, you're not bringing the same old information that your competitors are bringing. This will set you apart. You're able to demonstrate trending, which static information doesn't do. But this also separates me from the marketplace. You know, my name's Craig. It's not the market, right? So I'm letting these graphs communicate with you, James. This is the market here. This is not me telling you a price that you don't want to hear. This is what's going on in the marketplace. Okay, so you're able to deflect any bad news off of you and onto the market, which, I mean, is fair, right? Because my name's Craig, it's not the market. How about sales by volume? So look what's happening to the market here, James. The volume of sales has dropped off dramatically over the last few months. What does that tell them? Days on market. At the same time, the days on market are going way up. What would that tell you?
Becoming more difficult to sell a home, and it's taking longer. The layman can understand that.
Okay, so let's go through these from the top. Okay, so less homes are selling for 100% of the asking price than earlier in the year. The number of units sold has dropped dramatically. Average price is kind of all over the place. The list to sales ratio has dropped dramatically. the sales volumes drop dramatically. The days in the market at the same time are going way up. What would that communicate to any reasonable seller? What's happening with the market? It's not getting better. So, if James is one of these sellers that says, well, look, I hear you, Craig, and, you're telling me 475 to 500, but I want to list it at 550. Okay, if we were going into an up market, maybe that might make sense, but going in clearly into a softer market, that would not make sense. Okay, now the opposite's also true. If the market trends indicated that the market was heading up, the days in the market were going down, and all these graphs I've just shown you here are the flip opposite, then that might indicate that, James, you might be able to list your home higher than some of the past sales. Because remember, the past sales that we looked at, the static information, we're looking in the rearview mirror. That is what has happened. Where the market trends help us understand what is about to happen. So we know that people want to deal with the expert. That's what they want. They want an expert. They don't want the process of selling their home to be confusing. This will help you get the listing, okay? By doing this exactly the way we've got it laid out here, it'll help you get the listing in the first place. So your presentation has to be so good that the following things happen. Number one, they want to deal with you, right? Your listing presentation has to be so awesome that number one thing is they pick you. Number two is they take your advice on price. And number three, they're willing to pay you more money than the other agents they interviewed. Tough job, right? But that's the job of your presentation. That's why your presentation has to be so strong, because you're up against other realtors that will do it for way less, and they'll tell the seller an unreasonable price to try to win the business. So by having a very strong listing presentation, you are the expert. And when you're the expert, they listen to you. And they're more likely going to take your advice when it comes to pricing, and they're more likely to pay you the fee that you deserve, because people will pay an expert more money than a common salesperson. Now, what do we do? Here's I'm preempting this. This is a question I know that I get asked all the time. Craig, what do you do if the seller is motivated, but they want to try a higher price? Well, you do the best you can to get them to price it right. But I got to say, if I've got a seller that's super motivated and despite my best efforts, I can't get them to list initially at my price, sure, I'll take it higher, provided I get a post-dated price reduction. And it's important to get this post-dated price reduction signed at the listing table, the day you're listing the home. Because too many times, and you all know that this is true, the seller convinces you to list the home higher than what you recommend. And you might say this, the conversation might go like this: well, let's try it for a month, and if it's not working out, would you agree, Mr. Seller, James, would you agree after a month that we'll reduce the price down to my price? I want you to feel acknowledged, because I want you to get, the more money I get for you, the more money I get. So I want you to feel acknowledged. I don't want to lose your business just because another realtor is telling you a higher price. So why don't we do this? We'll list your home at $549,900. And if you're right, then, we'll get good feedback, and hopefully we'll get offers in the first 30 days. But if I'm right and we're getting a lot of showings and no offers or not many showings, then let's bring the price down to $499. But let's post-date this right now. That way I don't need to bother you. We don't need to get together again. That's what I want to happen. Because too many times the seller agrees with me. Oh, yeah, no problem. Let's try it at my price first. And a month from now, Sure, Craig, we'll reduce the price to your price. And then a month from now, when you follow up with them, guess what? Different story. They've got short memories. We didn't say that. They don't want to reduce the price now. And now you're stuck with an overpriced listing. This is important. If you want happy sellers, and if you want any chance of getting an overpriced listing reduced, you need to communicate with them weekly. Okay, but here's what I used to do, James. I would overprice it and then ignore them. Right? I would overprice it, and to make matters worse, I wouldn't communicate with them because I was afraid. I didn't know what to say. The only thing I could say to them is, well, I messed up and overpriced your property. But it just makes matters worse. I think we would all agree that if you've got a listing on the market for over 30 days and you're getting a ton of showings and no offers, or the opposite, you're getting very few showings and no offers, then price is a problem. And the agreement I have with all my sellers is that we're going to call every realtor that shows your home, and we're going to get the feedback from their buyer. Of course, if it's our buyer, we'll get that feedback as well. So every week, we're going to assemble a report with how many showings you had on your property, what each buyer had to say, and we'll let you know what we're doing to market and advertise the property and answer any of the questions that you have. Okay, that's going to happen on a weekly basis. So we're going to be, we also ask the seller for their permission so that we can be brutally honest with the feedback. So James, one of the things that we do if you decide to list your home with us is we're big on communication, and we are going to call you every single week and give you a report of exactly how many people have looked at your home and what each buyer had to say, and we'll let you know what we're doing to market and advertise your home and answer any of the questions that you have. Okay, you can count on that. Every week we're going to contact you. Now, James, do we have your permission to be brutally honest with you about the feedback? Well, there's not too many sellers who are going to say, no, hide the truth from me. So now, if it's overpriced, we're going to be brutally honest. Every week, James is going to get a phone call, and it's going to go like this. Hey, James, sorry, no showings again this week. Or, James, we had 14 showings this week, but no offers. You were number 4 choice for this buyer, number 3 choice, and, these other buyers, here's what they didn't like about your home. So after a couple weeks of this, the seller's prime for a reduction if you do this properly. Now, if the home is not reduced or does not sell in 30 days, okay, if you get a ton of showings and no offers, or you're not getting showings, we know the price has to come down. And especially if you're in a falling market, you want to lead the market down. If you're in a rising market, well, you might get away with being patient because the market might catch your overpriced listing. But in a flat market or a falling market, doing nothing is not going to work. So one of the things, I'll tell you a little story here. One of the things that, little systems that I built into my business was what I call the 30-day seller letter. Because, James, here's what would happen. If I listed your home for too much money, and week after week, we're calling you and we're giving the feedback. If I'm not able to get you reduced, sometimes I had a tendency to procrastinate. And the longer that goes on, the more difficult it was for me to raise this whole issue of pricing. So my tendency was to ignore it. So I give you the feedback because, let's face it, it's not a nice conversation sometimes to have with the seller, especially, James, if I'm the one that picked the price. So week after week after week, I'm calling you. But after a month, this house needs to be reduced, right? We're not getting showings. So I had a tendency to procrastinate. How many of you are like me? You know, avoid, 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 avoid. That wasn't working. So what I decided to do was build a little system in place. So on day 30, James calls me about pricing. Okay, so if James, we don't have an offer on your house, nothing's going on after 30 days, we're going to send out this letter, and it's on the coaching site here. It's the 30-day letter. Now, this is in the listing activity plan. This is automatically going to go out. Had nothing to do with me. My assistant, Cindy, is going to send this out on day 30. So, dear James, your home has now been on the market for over 30 days, and since it's not already sold, I feel we should review what has happened in the last month. I can provide you with specific information as follows. The total number of agent and buyer showings on your home, along with their individual feedback, the advertising schedule used to expose your property to qualified buyers, a review of our computerized printout detailing recent listings and sales in your area, and my advice and experience as to the appropriate next steps. Anybody want to take a guess on what my advice is going to be on the appropriate next steps?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and answer any of the questions or concerns you have. When convenient, please give me a call. My direct number is. Okay, so this is an example of me creating a system because I know I'm a procrastinator when it comes to calling my sellers and asking for price reductions. So this is going to happen, right? On day 30, my assistant is sending this letter out. If the house has not been reduced, I mean, the first thing that Cindy would do is she would check the contact card. And, if I just had reduced your house, James, a week ago, this letter obviously would not go out. But Cindy would look at the notes, and she'd say, oh, here's Craig procrastinating. Craig has been calling James every single week, and there's been no showings on his house, but Craig has not, he's not talked about price reductions here. So I'm going to send this letter out. And this conversation is now going to happen. Because, James, you get this letter, and now you're calling me. You're saying, Craig, I just got your letter about my home being on the market for 30 days. And in the letter, you say that you can provide me with some specific information, including advice to what we should be doing here. What are the appropriate next steps? Okay, so I'm forcing this conversation about pricing to happen in the first 30 days. And that was a little bit of an innovation for me because here's what I used to do, James. I would avoid, and then now a month goes by, 2 months go by, I see you at the local mall, and I hide from you. And I think we'd all agree, the longer we procrastinate, the tougher it is to have this conversation. And especially if we're in a falling market, the further and further and further we're falling behind true market value. Okay, so that's a little system. I'd recommend all of you have that system. Day 30, that letter goes out. If you haven't got a price reduction, have your assistant send it out. Now it's going to cause the seller to call you 100% of the time on day 30. And now you're going to have that conversation. It's going to happen now. And don't be afraid to release sellers that are not logical. Throughout my 25-year career, the sellers that were the biggest pain in the butt were the ones that weren't logical. These are the sellers that call you late at night and early in the morning, and they're very demanding, and they don't want to pay you your commission, and they want to price it too high. The answer for me was it was way easier to generate a lot more sellers than to try to work with these kind of people. So it was really liberating to be able to just get rid of them, to fire them. It's very empowering to be able to fire sellers that are illogical. and you're going to get them. So it goes right back to step one, right? Make sure your lead generation system is working properly and your conversion system is working properly, so you have lots of sellers. If you have lots of seller opportunities, you're not held hostage. You know, you're living in a world of abundance, not the world of scarcity. Living in the world of scarcity is no fun because now you feel pressured to work with everybody. And everybody is not great to work with. I mean, there are some buyers and sellers are way better than others. Wouldn't it be great if you could choose who you want to spend your time with? So let's go back to the site, the coaching site, and make sure everybody knows where to find all the resources here. Here's a price reduction script. Let's hope that this works. Ta-da. This is the price reduction script that my customer service manager, Tammy Johnson, would use. So customer service manager, in our experience, a home that's been on the market for 30 days or has had 15 showings, whichever comes first, should have received an offer, which we have not received yet. So together, let's review the facts that we've gathered about your home. Okay, so here's an example of the information that Tammy would share with the seller. Okay, so first of all, your home's been on the market for 34 days. We advertised your property in the October 1st and October 8th editions of the Era Banner. We had you on our Sunday tour of homes last Sunday, and your home was, of course, advertised as part of the tour of home last Thursday. Your home is presently being advertised on 5 websites: Craig's own site, Realtor.com, Toronto MLS, Remax, MLS.ca. We've had 8 buyer broker showings. There were 4 couples that came through your home as part of our tour last Sunday. The buyer's feedback that we've received from the real estate agents that have shown your home indicate that your home shows well. A couple of the buyers thought your home was a little small, and 2 others did not care for the location. Now, we can't change either of those things, so we need to look at the value that we represent to interested buyers. Okay, and then Tammy would go through current listings and sales. And here are 2 possible seller responses. Okay, number 1. Well, Tammy, if there's nothing wrong with my house, then why don't people just bring me an offer? Okay, here's Tammy's response. What is happening is the potential buyers out there do not perceive us as being the best value on the market. So, James, here's what I would say to you. If you said, well, Craig, I'm getting lots of showings, and if you're saying it's the price that's the problem, well, that doesn't stop buyers from making an offer. And I would say this to you, James. I'd say, well, look, buyers typically look at a number of homes before they decide which one they're going to make an offer on. And buyers typically are going to make the offer on the home they perceive to be the best value, number 1 on the list, not number 2 or 3. And I think Tammy gives an example here. James, if you were looking at cars, you probably wouldn't make an offer on the car you thought was the 3rd best value. You'd make an offer on the car you felt was the best value. Well, it's the same in real estate. Buyers are not, if we're not number 1 for perceived value of all the homes they looked at, we're not going to get the offer. The buyer is going to make the offer they looked at 15 homes, they're going to make an offer on the home that they perceived was the best value. And Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we're not that home. That's what buyers are telling us. We may be the bridesmaid, but we're not the bride. We're not getting offers. And, we're not going to get your home sold. We're not going to get an offer on your home being the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th choice. Okay, the second seller response might be, well, gee, Tammy, we've only had a few showings. Doesn't it need to be on the market longer? Well, if we've had it on the market for 34 days, we've only had a few showings, what does that tell us? So here's Tammy's answer, response to number 2. The reason we're not getting the activity that we should be is simply because we're being ruled out before we even get a showing. For example, if you came to me as a buyer and you said you wanted to buy a home for $250,000, I'd search the MLS system for homes that match your criteria, and they're priced up to $250. Then I'd sift through all those listings and pull out those that offer the most for the money. You might even drive by a few of those homes in order to eliminate some of the properties. I think that as a seller, you're being ruled out right there. Based on price, location, and size, we are being eliminated. Obviously, we can't change the location or size, so it really comes down to price. Okay, so eventually, you're probably going to have a customer service manager that'll help you call all your sellers every single week and give them this information. Now, right now, that's going to have to be you. If you don't have a customer service manager, you're it. So this is what you should be doing. Let's go back to this site here. Okay, the 30-day seller letter, we looked at that. Market statistics, okay, and market statistics. This is the information that you can get directly from realestatestatistics.com. Okay, it's just loading up now, but this is Leon Dancona's company here in Toronto. And for $29.95 a month, this is an awesome program. Okay, and here it comes. So the whole idea here is show information that other agents won't show. Okay, and this is what we looked at earlier. Okay, so all of this is available right on the coaching website. So all you need to do is go to resources, and right here, call number 7, getting the price right. All right, well, look, on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up here. I hope everyone enjoyed our webinar today on pricing it right. If you have any questions, of course, you can speak to your coach or call our office toll-free at 1-800-538-1034. I want to thank James McDonald and Andrea for doing a great job as always, and especially want to thank all of our coaching members, as always, for your support, and hope you've enjoyed our webinar here today. Take care, and that concludes today's webinar.